Good Samaritan parable. You've all heard the Good Samaritan story, which is why I've picked it, because I think within 20-25 minutes we're all done, dusted. We take the same message home, and it's happy days. Now, I'm just going to read it through to you, and then we'll kind of get into really what I want to talk about. So, to give you some kind of background to the Good Samaritan story, Jesus has established himself now as being an authority. In that sense, not an authority like a king would be an authority or like a political leader, but an authority of wisdom and an authority of something we need. Okay, what people are seeking for. And that's why people are flocking to them, flocking towards him. And at this point, obviously, people who have authority in that time aren't happy with this because they don't want to lose that power. So there's a dialogue that takes place, and it's between what the Bible says, an expert in the law, so someone who's very well educated, and Jesus. And it was an open dialogue where people would have heard. All right? In other words, it was a challenge to Jesus' authority at that time. And when you read these challenges in the Bible, there's loads of them. It still amazes me how Jesus responds to these challenges, and I think we can learn a lot as Christians in regards to how we deal with these things. But also, when he teaches through these challenges, I think that's just profound, because there's multiple levels to the way he can communicate. So this is the Good Samaritan. I've taken it from Luke. And he says, on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? He's going straight to the meat of it here. What is written in the law? Jesus replied. How do you read it? He answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself. So Jesus says, you have answered correctly. Do this and you will live. All right? That's where you'd think the dialogue would end. However, the expert wants to push further at this point. So he says to Jesus, because he wanted to justify himself, who is my neighbor? And at this point, if we were having this kind of conversation with somebody, we could fall into the trap that's being set up here. We could begin to list groups of people, categories of people, and things like that, of who we should be neighbours to. We might say the lame, we might say the homeless, we might say the poor. And all of a sudden, when we start to do that, we exclude people from this circle that we now begin to define as our neighbour. But obviously, Jesus is Jesus. He was there before time began, so he's not going to fall for this trap. So Jesus replied, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he travelled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him, bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have had. He then turns back to the expert of the law. Now I believe in that parable, that story, Jesus is looking at the expert of the law, but he's talking to everyone else around him. Okay? Whenever you're in dialogue with someone about Christ, the person you're talking to, you may never get through that hard heart. But the people around you, they're listening. So always keep them in mind and take account of that. Then Jesus challenges the expert. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert of the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus replies, go and do likewise. Which is exactly what he said before, do this and you will live. It comes back to his original answer. Now, there's many ways this can be taught. Anyone's ever sat in Sunday school? This is a golden oldie, all right? And it's taught quite often in the sense of to be the Good Samaritan. It's a morality story, and it's a fantastic story to teach kids. It's a fantastic story to teach adults, to whereby if we see someone in need, we should go and we should help them. And that's a fantastic way to view this story. And it's also quite popular in Sunday school because if anyone ever cancels and they can't make it to deliver a Sunday school lesson, you can replace it and just pull out the good old Samaritan story and you're good. There's about 3 things you can pull from the Bible. You know, you can do the 10 Commandments, that's always a classic. There's the Good Samaritan, that's always a classic. There's the lost coin. It's usually one where you can play games around them. All right. So for Sunday school, it's good. It's getting there. So anyone on Sunday school who's thinking about Sunday school, learn this one, get it in the back pocket because it will come out time and time again. And there's nothing wrong with reinforcing the morality of this story, to be the Good Samaritan, to do as this person did. Another way to look at it is the way my brother Heath has spoke about this. And it's the idea that anyone could be the Good Samaritan. What that means is to understand what I mean by that is to look at why Jesus chose the central figure to be a Samaritan and not any other person at the time, not like a Roman official or anything like that. It's because the expert in the law would have been Jewish. And let's be honest, Jewish people at the time had a strong prejudice against the Samaritans. So to choose that as a central figure and to say a Samaritan can be just as good at obeying the law as you can, expert in it, was a real slap in the face. And you can see that when the expert replies, he doesn't say the Samaritan. He won't say those words. They won't come out of his lips. He says the one who had mercy on him. He won't even utter the word Samaritan. And my brother spoke about this because we can apply that to ourselves. We can apply it to our prejudices. So if you were to take this as somewhere, say you were to speak to people who are a bunch of racists, all right, you might select a black person to be the Good Samaritan because it would challenge their prejudice. If you've got an issue against homosexual people, you might make that the central person. And what it's drawing your attention to is that anyone is capable of helping the person on the floor who needs help. All right? It's not isolated to just being an expert in the law in that sense. So it's a way of challenging people's prejudices. And I'd love to leave it there, but I couldn't find any more of Heath's preach to steal, so I had to make my own thing up. So I'm going to really expand upon a message I give to there's a youth group me and Sarah do on Friday nights with older youth from the age of, well, they're all 18 now actually, apart from one who's 17. And occasionally I bring a message and we'll go through it and we try and tackle the questions that might be on their mind at the time. So this is a message I brought from the Good Samaritan and the perspective I've taken from it, because I like the morality story to teach people to be the Good Samaritan. I like the challenge of prejudice story, because through our prejudices, we may be inclined not to take the gospel to such people, all right, because that prejudice could block us. But I'm going to kind of come from a different perspective, and we're going to look at the characters of this story. So the first one is the traveller. And I love this because we have no information of who this traveller is. We don't know the job. We don't know if they're married, if they have children. We don't know, let's face it, their gender. All right, we don't know what their position in society is, whether they're a royal, a worker, a slave, or anything like that. We just know this person is making an arduous journey from Jerusalem to Jericho. And if you look up this journey from Jerusalem to Jericho, it's about 18 miles that they would have taken over mountain territory in the baking heat of that area of the country. So it's not a decent journey to take. But who is the traveller? Right? Who can we put in the travel of this story? All right? I'm looking around this room, and it's me. I'm the traveller in this story. Each and every single one of you is the traveller in this story. Okay? And what you're travelling on, the road from Jerusalem to Jericho, is the road of your life. Because each person has that mountain to get over at some point and to go through. And life can be harsh. Life is harsh. It can be harsh. I'll guarantee every single person in this room, you are going to experience, if you've not already done so, harshness of life. And you're going to continue until the last breath leaves your body. You will experience the harshness of life. And it will be brutal. And it will beat you down. Now, this doesn't sound good, right? Because you're the traveller right now. You're thinking, wow, okay, because you know what's coming up. It's the robbers. All right? Now, the robbers, well, they're all the trials and difficulties outside of that things that come along in life. All right? They could be that person at work who just really has it in for you. It could be a broken down marriage. It could be a dysfunctional relationship with your children or with your parents. It can be someone who just genuinely doesn't like you. Or it can be someone like Putin, who's waging war against a country like Ukraine. All right? The robbers are those who are purposely out to do something to you. However, it's also your sinfulness. After everything that anyone can do to you, the greatest damage that can be done to you is from yourself when you sin. I've labeled the robbers no hope. They are no hope. Because sinfulness has no hope. It has one direction and one destination. It will leave you dead. The next characters then are the priest and the Levite. The priest and the Levite, well, I've labeled them as all the philosophies of the world religions, the ideas, the worldviews, the false religions, which at first glance seem quite attractive. Okay? Seems quite attractive. Now, I don't know what each person has done in here, but a few, in terms of what you've looked at in life, I know some people are saved, some people have got Christ at the center of your life, others you may not have. But a few weeks ago, I was at the 50th birthday party. And whilst we were there, we had our kids there, and there was another couple who had a child who was about 2, similar age to our youngest. And as they do, they wander around the garden and they'll go wherever they see fit, unless there's a fence in the way, which then that's it. So there's nowhere out of bounds. So we end up in the same place with our children. And their kid does something. And then the dad says, no, we don't do that. That's not what Jesus would want us to do. I was like, oh, right, okay. Don't know these people. I'm just curious. You've just said that. Are you Christians? So, oh, yeah. I said, oh, well, do you go to church? Where this and the other. So they told me where they go. I said, so how long have you been Christian? The usual conversation you have when you meet someone who, and like, oh, just a few months. I thought, well, that's quite intriguing. So I was like, well, tell me your story. And they told me, as we do. It's like, oh, I had a difficult life, and someone told me about Christ, and boom, there it is. I said, give us the story. Give us the actual meat of, how, it was a remarkable story. I'm not going to get into that. But it was a remarkable story about how God spoke to them simultaneously in their home, away from all things what we would consider Christian. In fact, he was watching a TV show called Vikings about Norse gods and so on and so forth. He couldn't get any further removed from Christianity. But the remarkable thing is I got chatting to the gentleman, and he said, I've tried Buddhism, I've tried Hinduism, I've tried all these different philosophies, I've tried meditation and so on and so forth. And he said, but they never satisfied what I needed. He goes, and then I found Christ. And he goes, and it's just fulfilled me. And it was remarkable with that. I met somebody who'd gone on this journey, and they'd met these priests and this Levite on their life's road. And they seem attractive to these philosophies. They seem like they're all, they've got something you can take from them and you can learn and you can apply to your life. But I call these things false hope. See, the robbers, they were no hope. And the philosophies and the ideas and the world religions and the false religion and all those things, they're false hope. Because as they approach, they look like they're going to bring you what you need. But then they pass on by because they can't actually deliver the very thing you are in requirement of. Because let's remind ourselves, we are the traveler. And we are dying on the side of a road. Okay? That is a harsh reality of this life. Now, I'm a physically fit person. I like to keep myself active. I do a lot of activities. I know Josh is a similar person. All right? There is no difference between myself or Josh or a terminally ill patient in the hospital. The stark difference is they're more well aware of the impending end of their life than what I am. But the reality of it within this is I am still on the side of that road. My life could be demanded of me the very moment I leave this room. I have no idea. God may call my final breath out of my body. So we've done the robbers, we've done the traveller, which is ourselves. The robbers, no hope. The priest, the Levite, they're the false hope. So you know where I'm going with this. Who is the Good Samaritan? Okay? That's what I love about the parables Jesus teaches. He's the central figure every single time. I'm not saying it's a mistake to make us the central figure, but it is to think we're the only central figure. The Good Samaritan is, like you've guessed, Jesus Christ. And, just like the experts of the law, Jesus Christ is the very thing we despise before we become saved. If you speak to anyone who is not a Christian, quite often now you'll find there's a hostility to the idea of Jesus Christ. There's a prejudice towards the very thing who's going to save us. So, the Good Samaritan is Jesus Christ. What role is he fulfilling? It's pretty self-explanatory now, isn't it? Once all those false hopes have passed you by, left you for dead on the side of the road, and you found yourself wanting, found yourself seeking. I can imagine this person who's lying there dying, just lifting their head up when they hear footsteps, just trying to catch the eyes of the person. I can imagine when the Samaritan comes along, he doesn't even lift his head up anymore. It's just a case of, this will be it. When we get this description, the way Jesus words it is, how would we behave in that scenario if we saw someone lying on the side of the road dead? The odds are I would approach with great wariness. And possibly after I've spent a good while looking around to see what's gone on. If I approached. There's a good chance I might not do. I might just ring the phone and pass it on to the authorities. If I'm brutally honest, because of self-preservation. I'd use excuses. I'm not a medical professional. How can I possibly help them? But in the Good Samaritan story, it's quite clear. As soon as he sees him, he goes to him, takes pity on him, and then he proceeds to care for the inflictions upon the traveler. That is Jesus Christ coming to us. Jesus is revealing to the experts of the law who he is in this story. And we see this multiple times throughout. We've got Luke 5:31. Jesus answered them, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick." And the thing is, if we convince ourselves that we are not sick, we will not seek the doctor. Ephesians 2:8-9, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and it is not from yourselves." We cannot save ourselves. That's the one unique thing about the traveler on the road. At the point there is nothing. That location between Jerusalem and Jericho is in the middle of a mountain. Now, if you're ever stranded on a mountain, you'll realize you're not rescuing yourself. That's why they've got to send mountain rescuers to get you off the mountain. Now, if you fall and you've injured yourself when you're dying, that significantly reduces your odds of survival. At this point, this person is not going to survive off anything they can do. You are not going to, under any merit or effort of yourself, save yourself. Other religions will tell you you can do. If you just do good enough. There is nothing good enough that you can do to save yourself. It is a physical impossibility. In Ephesians 2:8-9, I'm going to say it again. "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves, it is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." So I want to summarize, because I didn't want to keep you long this morning. Point 1, you're not capable of saving yourselves. You are the abandoned, left for dead traveler on the road of your life. Number 2, the philosophies, world religions, ideas, whatever you want to call them, come in nice little neat packages, beautiful books, with like lofty ideas, they're not going to save you. They may make the journey slightly bearable for a bit of time, maybe, but ultimately, they're not going to be the thing that you want or you're seeking. And point 3, only Jesus Christ can save you. Go and try the fruits of the world if you like. And when you realize you're still hungry, come back to the real tree of life and taste the fruit that he's offering. I want to finish by telling you a story about why this is important. Because we get hooked up on things. We get hooked up on, whether God judges us and things like that. And the Bible tells us that Jesus Christ came to save. And did not come to condemn the world, but to save it. Now, a few years ago, I used to be part of a team called Street Pastors. Eddie will remember it. Where we used to go out into the street at night, around the nightclubs and things like that. And we used to, anyone who had too much to drink, I've got some funny stories coming back. You'd meet some people, right, and you have no idea what they do for a living. This is the side story now. It's just come back to me. There was a lady we helped home one night. She was worse for wear, really worse for wear. And I think there was me, there was Mary, and there was someone else. I'm not gonna. If I'm right, I won't say the name anyway. But there was a taxi service we worked with. We had a trust relationship with, so we didn't, just put them in any old taxi. And if they were really worse for wear, we'd get in the taxi with them and take them home and then get them in the house. Anyway, so this one lady, we got her in the taxi and she's thrown up into her handbag, right? It's really bad. And obviously, so I say she's thrown up into a handbag. We've chosen the handbag as the destination of that vomit, rather than the taxi or anything like, or ourselves for that matter. And Mary sat on one side, I'm sat on the other side. The other person sat in the car with us as well. And we get, you find the address out through mumbled slurs of this person. You know what I mean? It's like Krypton Factor. Piece it together. I've got a letter. It's like, where's the drive? It's a drive. Okay, we eliminate roads. So we got them back to the house, and we got them in the house, and they threw up on the carpet, and we got them we didn't even try and get them upstairs at this point. We got them onto the lounge. And then you kind of, at this point, this person they're just going at that point. They've had that much. So you kind of get them to the point where if they're going to vomit, it's just going to keep going on the floor kind of scenario. But before we got into the house, we couldn't get the keys. All right, and this is a great card. I've sidetracked massively now, but it's a funny story. I was like, we need to get the keys for the house. I said, well, they're in the handbag. Anyway. Mary's like, well, get it out. So I can't go in a woman's handbag, Mary. There could be things in there that I'm not supposed to see. So Mary was like, so gets the you know that stringy stuff, you just keep pulling it, don't you? The vomit is just strung together. Unlocks the door, we get her in, and that's it. Anyway, we put it down to sleep, and it's like, you have no idea who these people are. Anyway, she was a manager of Marks and Spencer's. Because the week later, I'm in there trying to find a new work shirt, and I get to the till, I'm like, and I've got this big smile on my face. She has no idea how. She's like, hello, can I help you? It's like, if I do a reveal how I know you. I thought, I didn't know, obviously, because that would just be cruel. But it's like you met some people, and there were so many people that you just bumped into. And they'd be like, where do I know you from? It's like, you do know what? You don't want to know where you know me from, pal. You really don't. Well, I can tell you don't want to know. Anyway, this one particular evening, I got into a conversation with two gentlemen. And it was quite rare you actually got into a conversation, because you can imagine people who are drunk or they've had something to drink, they don't, they'll throw loads of ideas to you and expect you to challenge you and stuff like that. And you've got about 4 or 5 people all spouting stuff, and you can't make head and tail what's going on, and they'll go off to the night, and that is it. But these two, they actually pulled us over for a conversation. And the reason why I'm telling you this story is to make very clear to you why you need Jesus Christ. Okay? Because I mentioned the robbers are your sinfulness. And Christ came to take away the sin of the world. And we can get hung up sometimes, like these two gentlemen did, on the sins that we commit and that those around us commit. And we can give the message, we can give the wrong message to some people. So these two gentlemen, they had a bit back and forth and stuff, and then one of them he just openly came out and said, well, I'm gay. And I was like, okay. I already knew that because you'd called me beautiful several times and stroked my face. However, thank you for clarifying, he did it 3 times. What would be classed as sexual assault now, but for me, it's water off a duck's back. And I said, so I was like, okay, fair enough. He said, well, I've got a question for you. He said, will God deny me a place in heaven because I have had sexual intercourse with a man? And I pose that question to each one of you now. Will God deny you a place in heaven because of your sinfulness? Really think about that question. So I said to him, and he was quite honest, because I've asked lots of people who are Christians this question, and they've never given me an answer. I said, I can see why. It's a tough question. I said, well, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions first, and then I will give you an answer to this question. Whether it's the answer, I'll give you an answer. So I said, have you ever lied before? He said, well, yeah, of course I've lied before. I said, so you're a liar. I said, because you've come to me, you've identified yourself as a homosexual man, and you've identified something which me as a Christian would frown upon, and that is sexual intercourse with another man. I said, but have you lied before? He said, well, yeah. I said, so you're a liar. I said, I've lied before, so I'm a liar. I just think it's interesting you've not identified yourself as a liar, you've identified yourself as something else when you've come to speak to me. I said, have you ever taken something which wasn't yours and not taken it back? I've done this loads of times. If you ever work in a teaching establishment, it becomes second nature to you. You know what I mean? You pick up a book, you think, oh, you do intend to take it back, you just don't do. I mean, I've got a library of books that I need to take back to places which don't even exist anymore. I've got books from Habegum High School. It's not there anymore. I can't physically take it. If I took it back, it would hang in midair where the bookshelf was and hit the deck. And be in the grass that's now on the floor. It wouldn't be there. But he said, well, yeah. So, well, technically, you've stole then. Would you? I said, I've done the same thing. I said, I've taken something which isn't mine, and I've not taken it back. I said, sometimes I've actually taken, when I was younger, I took something which wasn't mine, intentionally, making that conscious decision. You know? And he said, yeah. I said, right, cool. I said, so here's my answer to you. I said, because you've not given yourself the title of liar or anything like that. I said, but if you remove the homosexuality and put it over here, imagine that's not part. I said, now let's rephrase the question. Will God deny you a place in heaven because you have lied? Because that's a sin, according to the Bible. Or will God deny you a place in heaven because you have stole? Because that's a sin in the Bible. And he thought about it, and I said, I'll now give you my answer. And he was surprised about this answer. I said, my answer is no. God will not deny you a place in heaven because you have had sexual intercourse with a man, or because you have lied, or because you have stole, or cheated, or anything else that you may do in your life. I said, when you stand before God, he will ask you one question. Did you or did you not accept my Son, Jesus Christ, as your Savior? And that is what the traveller needs. In John 12, I'll finish with this, 44 to 48. Then Jesus cried out, whoever believes in me does not believe, whoever believes in me does not believe in me only, but in the one who sent me. The one who looks at me is seeing the one who sent me. I have come into the world as a light, so that no one who believes in me should stay in darkness. If anyone hears my words but does not keep them, I do not judge that person. For I did not come to judge the world, but to save it. There is a judge for the one who rejects me. Jesus does not list a bunch of sins. He makes it very black and white. The gospel is black and white. There is a judge for the one who rejects me and does not accept my words. The very words I have spoken will condemn them at the last day. And that's what I want to leave you with today. It's not your sins that will deny you a place in heaven. It's the rejection of the salvation of Jesus Christ. Really think about that. Thank you.